الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فقد قال الله تبارك وتعالى في القرآن المجيد والفرقان الحميد بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا وقال تعالى في مقام آخر يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون وقال تعالى يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما صدق الله العظيم فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار أما بعد. Respected brothers and sisters, no matter how cliche it may sound, but the solution to all of our current day problems lies in the Quran and the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Taraktu fikum amrayn, lan tadillu ba'di abada." That I leave behind you two matters. No matter what time in history it is, as long as you adopt these two matters, as long as you hold on to these two matters, you will never be misguided and you will never go astray. That is the Quran and the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions many stories. What is the purpose of these stories? Allah says, لَقَدْ كَانَ فِي قَصَصِهِمْ عِبْرَةٌ لِأُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ. That in these stories that are mentioned in the Quran, there is a lesson for all of you. Hence, when we study the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, time after time, situation after situation, whenever the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam found himself in a difficult circumstance, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would reveal ayat to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he would convey to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam a story from the Quran to console Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was able to understand these ayat. Then he taught the Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala anhum these ayat of the Quran, and he taught them that whenever you find yourself in difficult situations, go back to the Quran, go back to the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and most certainly you will find your answer. Brothers and sisters, if you and I don't study the Quran, and we don't take a lesson from the stories of the Quran, then we will not benefit from the Quran. The stories that are mentioned in the Quran are not bedtime stories. And the way, unfortunately, we're taught these stories in Sunday school does not really help us capture the essence of these stories. Nowadays, things are different in Sunday schools. Now they may be concentrating on some of the lessons learned from the stories. But when I was a young child going to Sunday school in my own local masjid, that was not the case. It was just simply a story, and there was no lessons taken from those stories. So then, how can we benefit from the Quran? See, if you and I, once again, we don't study the past, we don't know what to do in the future. If I don't know what has happened in history, I cannot plan ahead. That's why Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, one of the most, a hadith that is mentioned in the books of a hadith, in the books of a hadith, but a hadith that I take very dear, and I take it, I keep it very close to myself, is a hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that one time a man by the name of Abdul Uzza, he was a poet during the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who would be on the side of the Quraysh. He was not a Muslim, and he was captured after the battle of Badr. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he came to him, he pleaded. He said, "Ya Rasulullah, please let me go. I promise I will not participate with the Quraysh in any upcoming battles." The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam felt merciful. Said, "Okay, khair, you can go." He left. The next battle, the battle of Uhud, again he showed up, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was able to capture him. The Muslims were able to capture him, and then this time when he was in front of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he pleaded again, and this time Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says that I will not make the same mistake twice. And there's a hadith that is found where the Prophet alaihi wasallam says, "La yuldagul mu'minu min juhrin wahidin marratayn." It is an expression that is used by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Literally, it means that a person is not stung by the same hole twice. Meaning that long ago, if you study the history of how animals will live, even till today, snakes generally live in the ground. And people, they would sit near holes in the ground, and sometimes a snake would come and bite them. And so the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is saying that a person who is a believer, he is smart. He never makes the same mistake twice. He will not sit next to the same hole and be stung again, because it is against the nature of a believer. And meaning, the Prophet ﷺ is telling us that a believer does not make the same mistake twice. Now, when you and I look at 2016, for some it was a memorable year. Why? Because the Chicago Cubs won the World Series. Wow, big deal. For some, it was all about sports. But for Muslims all over the world, it was a year to forget. It is a year to forget. There were many ups and downs that took place during this year where you and I would like to forget about. First of all, we all, children, adults, teenagers, seniors, we all witnessed a train wreck called the presidential elections, where you have people who are very open when it comes to their views. Open racist, misogynistic, and hateful towards minorities. And yet the people of the country elected a person of this type to lead them. A president whose words and actions and his decision making is clearly and very blatantly unprecedented. It was a year where we saw Muslim iconic people pass away, including Muhammad Ali, Junaid Jamshed, and Abdul Sattar Edi. We saw this during this year. It was a year where we saw a significant spike in hateful crimes towards minorities in general, whether Muslim or non-Muslim. And not only that, we saw a spike in Islamophobia. We saw in this year, 2016, not once, but on many occasions, we saw a group that claimed to be Muslims, and their actions are far from Islam and Muslims, that they carried out so many attacks around the entire world, and they claimed the lives of so many people, including the beloved city of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, brothers and sisters, when you and I see these kind of things happening, first thing is that there are some things that took place which are clearly beyond our control. There are things that happen that we cannot do anything about. But there are many things that we can do in order to ensure that we don't make the same mistake twice. Once again, going back to the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us to learn from your past. The Prophet ﷺ tells us that a believer does not make the same mistake twice. And if we are living in America today, and we continue the lives that we are living, then history will repeat itself. And we will have no one to blame but ourselves. 2016 was the year we saw what happened in Palestine. It has been going on for so many years. 2016 was a year when we all witnessed the horrifying and terrifying events that have been taking place in Syria, in Halab, and in Damascus. So the question is, that first of all is, what lesson do we take from this and where do we go from here? Because once again, we have to take a lesson from this. We cannot become desensitized and say, well, things are going to happen and I'm not in control of it, so let them happen. And we will adjust accordingly. No, that is not the nature of a believer. We have to start making a change from now. We have to learn from our past. So once again, what do we learn from this and how do we go forward? Number one, we have to learn that we have to remain connected with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. See, spirituality is important. But unfortunately today, many of us believe that spirituality is the only thing, and that is a problem. I'll be very open about it. Whenever we talk about spiritual topics at the masjid, everyone wants to show up. But whenever we want to talk about political matters, whenever people are talking about social events, everyone takes a seat back. If we want to change our situation, we have to become spiritually connected with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but we have to do much more than just spirituality. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and the Sahaba did not just sit in the masjid and say, Ya Allah, help us in the battle of Badr, and the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala came. No. How did the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam change the circumstances in Arabia? By just simply sitting in Masjid Nabawi and simply making dua? No. Yes, the Prophet ﷺ was spiritually connected with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but he did a lot more than that. I'm not taking away from spirituality. Spiritually, we have to remain connected with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you study the letters that were sent by Abu Bakr radiyallahu ta'ala an, and Umar Khattab radiyallahu ta'ala an, to all the governors, and by Uthman radiyallahu ta'ala an, and Ali radiyallahu ta'ala an, one of the very first things that they mention in all their letters when they would talk to the governors is that ittaqillah. Fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Be conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is absolutely the most essential thing that we all need. Because think about it, if people today were fearful of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, would they be doing the things that they are doing today? Absolutely not. All these leaders who are taking the lives of innocent Muslims, women, children, and men, if they had the fear of Allah, they would not be doing what they're doing today. So spirituality is important. Dua is also important. The Prophet ﷺ tells us in a hadith, and I'm paraphrasing here, that if there's one thing that can change the qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it is dua. We should make dua. Make dua every single day. Make dua for yourselves, make dua for your family, make dua for the entire Muslim ummah. Let us not forget what our Muslim brothers and sisters around the world are going through. But then there's a lot more than just spirituality, as I said. Brothers and sisters, we really need to enhance our knowledge. We are not knowledgeable. For the most part, we are only knowledgeable with those matters that will help us earn money. That's it. So if a person is an IT expert, the only thing he knows is IT. Whatever field you belong to, the only thing you know is only that. We don't know beyond that. When I say let's enhance our knowledge, let's increase our knowledge, I mean let's increase our knowledge about history. If you want to combat Islamophobia, if you want to make a change in our society, then first of all, we need to increase in our knowledge. Because for the most part, we are ignorant. We are ignorant about our history. When you see what is happening today in Palestine, when you see today what's happening in Syria, do you think that this happened overnight coincidentally? Absolutely not. This was a plan that has been put in place for many years. You study World War I and the impact that World War I had on the Middle East, you will understand the situation that we are going through today. When you go back just 100 years, 1915, and the British and what changes they made to the world, the very first thing that the British did in 1915 was that they brought an end to the Ottoman Empire. The thing that the Prophet ﷺ started ended by the British. They brought the Ottoman Empire to a complete end. That's it. They promised so many of the Arab people that if you help us fight and you help us defeat the Ottoman Empire, then we'll give you so much land, including Jerusalem. We'll give you all this land. Some of these people, they were lured in and they began to fight on behalf of the British. On the other hand, the British, they had a special negotiation with the French and the other British people. And then on the other hand, you had the Balfour Declaration. Balfour Declaration, many of you may be asking, what exactly is the Balfour Declaration? Let me tell you exactly what the Balfour Declaration was. It was a promise to the Zionists that we will give you Israel. That Israel will be a Jewish state. And that is where the decline starts. Today, when you see what's happening in Palestine, is something that started 100 years ago, 101 years ago. We don't know our history. And as long as we remain ignorant, and as long as we remain in the dark, we cannot fight for justice. How many times we get into this discussion? People outside are ignorant, but we are ignorant about our own history. We don't know. Study the life of Umar Khattab radiyallahu ta'ala an, the change that he made. When you and I study, when we talk about Social Security, when we work, a chunk of our money goes to Social Security. Who is the one who started the Social Security system? It was Umar Khattab radiyallahu ta'ala an. Today when people ask that, are you a veteran? Because veterans receive grants, they receive discounts. Wherever they go, they have special privileges. Who is the one who started this concept? During the time of Umar radiyallahu ta'ala an, he had benefits for army veterans and for the ulama. When you study Islamic history, when you study the Khulafai Rashideen and how Islam spread, not by the sword, but Islam spread in such a way that when people began to know about Islam, they were coming to Islamic countries to reside in Islamic countries because they knew that the only place that served justice were the Islamic countries. How many Jewish scholars, they thrived in Islamic countries. But you and I don't know this. Because for the most part, and I'll be very frank about this, you and I don't read too much. You and I don't read. When you see, I recently went to England for 2 days. Something that I saw on the plane, I see it everywhere. Our general society, like the non-Muslim society, Every single time they travel anywhere, they have a book. And they read and they read and they read. You know what non-Muslim, a lot of people they do, or like the people in our society, what they do? Is that before they go to sleep, they have a book in their nightstand. They'll take that out, read 2-3 pages, and they'll put it away. The more you read, the more you become knowledgeable. Today, we don't get a chance to read. And if we want to read something, we only go towards Islamic books. Brothers and sisters, there are so many books written by non-Muslim scholars regarding Islam. There are books written by non-Muslims that talk about the contribution of the Muslim world to world civilization. But we don't have a chance to read. And as long as we remain in this state, we will never learn. We will remain in this state of knowledge that we have. The only knowledge that we will have is when we come to the khutbah, when we come to the halaqah, and that is it. But no, we need to start reading. This is where it starts from. Start to read. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran says, اقرأ بسم ربك الذي خلق, He tells us in the very first 5 ayat that there are 3 components to knowledge. One of them may be irrelevant to many of us, but the other 2 are very relevant. One is read and one is write. Brothers and sisters, how many writers do we have today in our Muslim society? During the time of the Prophet ﷺ, there are people who would oppose the Quraysh, not by going into the battlefield, but even simply by writing. Today we need to develop writers. We have a lack of writers. We have a lack of people in our community, especially the younger ones, that they don't have the confidence to speak in front of non-Muslims. We need to help develop our upcoming generation. It's not about giving a khutbah. My advice to all the youngsters over here, don't try to develop your public speaking skills just to give a khutbah or just to give a khatara. No, don't do that, please. Because if you do that and that is your niyyah, then the only thing you'll be good at is only giving a halaqah. And we don't need people to do that anymore. We need more people to go outside and talk to the masses. We need more people to be a voice for the Muslims. We need more people to write on behalf of Muslims. We need more people to combat Islamophobia through writing and speaking. And today we're not doing that. We're not doing that. So there's no reading, there's no writing, and that's why we are in the same state as we are. We don't have any knowledge to begin with. Study colonialism. Study these things. Study the Dark Ages. People say that Muslims had no contribution to the world we live in. You read this, you study the Dark Ages, you will find out exactly what contributions the Muslims made to the world that we are living in. So since you and I don't know this, when we even come in front of an Islamophobe, we don't even know what to talk about. When did the Muslims come into this country? How long have been Muslims living in this country? I had a pastor who asked me this, that how long have Muslims been here in this country? As if he's trying to insinuate that Muslims have not been here for such a long time, and hence you should go back to where you came from. But then I began to explain to him that Muslims have been here for such a long time. When the Atlantic slave trade took place, the transatlantic slave trade that took place, a big percentage of the slaves that came to America from Africa were Muslims. But brothers and sisters, we don't know this until we don't pick up a book and read. So that's why I'm pleading to you that begin reading, enhance your knowledge, study about history, study about politics. I know politics, whenever we say the word politics, it has a negative connotation. I understand that today politics has become dirty, it has become something that we all want to stay away from, but there's nothing wrong in studying about the politics. Because we don't study, because we don't read, our kids don't read. And our kids are not going to grow up to defend Islam. Once again, we need a voice. Brothers and sisters, something else that we need to do in order to make sure that we don't repeat 2016 is to be more civically engaged. To be more civically engaged. Take your kids. When there are some social activities that are taking place, take your kids. I have seen so many kids that they go to these kind of events and they don't, let alone doing the work, a lot of times they don't even have the confidence to speak in front of other people. When you are civically engaged, you will work with other people. You will learn their behavior. You will learn their attitude. And you'll be able to interact with them. Today, Muslims are living in their own cocoon. They don't want to interact with anyone. As long as we live within ourselves, remember that we will be put aside, we will be isolated, and we will be marginalized. We don't want to repeat 2016. Many of us are looking at the presidential election. Many of us are thinking about what's going to happen after January 21st. But let's not think about that. Let's worry about the things that we need to do. We can make a change in our society, believe it or not. Don't sit here and say that I cannot make a change in my society. Most certainly, we all can make a change in our society, but it has to be every single person who will stand up and who will fight for this cause. It is no longer the responsibility of the activists. It is no longer the responsibilities of the Imam or the leaders of the community or the few people in the Masjid, but now this is something that we all have to stand up for. Young brothers and sisters, no matter what you're studying, always study what you're studying with the niyyah that first of all, yes, you will make money out of it, hopefully, inshallah. But number two is that you will use your skill set to make a difference in the world. What's the point of a Muslim who comes into this world, only worries about money and leaves without leaving a legacy behind? That's not who Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was. That is not who the Sahaba were. The Sahaba left a legacy. The Tabi'een, the Tabi' Tabi'een left a legacy. Ask yourself this question. I want all of you to ask yourself this question today, before you go to sleep. That if I were to die today, what legacy am I leaving behind for the world? And if there's no legacy that you're leaving behind in the world, if you're leaving nothing that people can be benefited from, it's not about my name. We should not do things so that people will remember my name after I pass away. But it's about doing something for the Muslim community that even after I pass away, people will benefit from my knowledge and my contributions. That is what a Muslim thinks about. Are we doing that today? For the most part, no. For the most part, no. So that's why it's important that we understand these things. Let's enhance our knowledge. Let's get involved in our own community. Let's get involved in our own community. Let's be civically engaged. Let's enhance our knowledge. Let's be connected with the masjid. And I guarantee you that if we do all these things, I guarantee you a year like 2016 will not repeat itself. But if we don't do anything about it and we just remain calm and we let others do it, then nothing will change. The same Islamophobia will take place. In fact, it may even increase over time. The hate against the Muslim community will increase, and then we have no one to blame but ourselves. I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He gives us the ability to act on what has been said and heard. Barakallahu lana wa lakum fil Qur'an al-azim wa nafa'na wa iyyakum bi ayati wa dhikr al-hakim. Astaghfirullah li wa lakum wa li sa'il muslimin fastaghfiru innahu al-ghafur rahim. الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فقد قال الله تبارك وتعالى في القرآن المجيد والفرقان الحميد بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد وبارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد أما بعد. Respected brothers and sisters, all the things I talked about, what 2016 was, what are the next steps that we need to take in order to make sure that 2016 or a year like 2016 does not repeat itself again. Many of you may be thinking that how much can I do really? I work, I support my family, I'm so preoccupied, especially in America. You ask anyone, if there's one thing that no one has, it is time. Everyone is extremely busy. But this is our responsibility. No matter what it is, this is our responsibility. If each one of us in the community does only a small share, then if you add up everyone's share, it will turn into something big and huge. But if each one of us, we leave it and we let someone else do it. Remember, someone else is going to believe the same thing. Someone else is going to say that, you know what, if they're going to do it, let them do it. That's not what we should be doing. That's not the way we should be thinking. Once again, the Prophet ﷺ tells us it is against the essence of a believer that he makes the same mistake twice. We have been making mistakes. We have not been doing the things that we are supposed to do. But let us make sure from now on we change. We can change history. We can't change the situation, the circumstances here, but it has to start from us. As long as we remain in this cocoon, we will never make a change. As long as we make this strong intention that we will change, I will change myself, and not worrying about anyone else, but I myself, I will start to change. I will start to increase in my knowledge. If you ever have a discussion with an Islamophobe, Islamophobes for the most part are absolutely ignorant. They're dumb. Sorry to say. They have no knowledge except for what they got from Fox News. If you come forward and you have knowledge of history, there is nothing that they can say in front of you. So I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He gives us the ability to make sure that we learn from our past. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the ability to make sure that we don't make the same mistake twice. I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He makes our situation better. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make our young generation leaders for our future. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make them a uniting voice for the Muslims and for everyone else. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala develop within our young generation leaders who will write to defend Islam, they will speak to defend Islam and to increase Islam. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect all of us. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect our Islamic institutions. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect our men, women, children. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect our brothers and sisters all over the world from any Islamophobes or anyone who wishes to cause any harm towards them. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. اللهم انصر الإسلام والمسلمين اللهم انصر الإسلام والمسلمين في كل مكان اللهم انصرنا على من خالفنا واحفظ بلادنا وأصلح أولادنا واشف مرضانا وعاف مبتلانا وارحم موتانا وخذ بأيدينا إلى كل خير وعاصمنا من كل شر واحفظنا من كل ضير اللهم قسم لنا من خشيتك ما تحول به بيننا وبين معصيتك ومن طاعتك ما تبلغنا به جنتك ومن اليقين ما تهون به علينا مصائب الدنيا ومتعنا بأسماعنا وأبصارنا وقواتنا ما أحييتنا واجعله الوارث منا واجعل ثأرنا على من ظلمنا وانصرنا على من عادانا ولا تجعل مصيبتنا في ديننا ولا تجعل الدنيا أكبر همنا ولا مبلغ علمنا ولا إلى النار مصيرنا ولا تسلط علينا من لا يرحمنا آمين رب العالمين إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون فاذكروني أذكركم واشكروا لي ولا تكفرون أقيم الصلاة